Hi, this is Catherine Moore, and I am back to discuss the policies of the Texas Annual Conference and to read the policies. My purpose in doing this is so that everyone can see the face of a sexual assault survivor from a United Methodist clergy who was once employed with the Texas Annual Conference before he passed away in 2012. My name is Catherine Moore. It's about my story and the systems that failed to protect me, failed to protect my children, and continue to fail other survivors today. I'm also going to read the policies from a handbook of the Texas Annual Conference Administration, the Residency Handbook of 2023 for candidates preparing for ordination in the Texas Annual Conference Administration of the United Methodist denomination. Okay. So I'm going to start off where I left off on page 17. Meeting form for second RET visit. Resident's name. Okay, I read that. So I'm going to start off on page 18. Discussion with resident, other matters. If there's anything else that needs to be brought up in determining the resident's fitness for ministry, have the conversation now. Discussion with RET. Ask the resident to leave the room and together come up with a summary for the Board of Ordained Ministry. Use from included in this handbook. Final summary. Invite the resident back in the room and share the summary that has been made of the meeting. Inform him or her that this summary will go to the Board of Ordained Ministry before he or she appears for an interview. Discuss the recommendation that the RET will make. Close in prayer. The next is page 19. Summary form for Board of Ordained Ministry. The resident's name, ministry location, date of second RET meeting, persons in attendance. What major areas were identified in the resident's growth plan? Did he or she follow the action plan agreed upon at the first meeting? What were the main points of the LCT evaluation? What were the main points of the RET discussion with the written materials? Does the RET recommend this candidate to go before the board or not? Did the candidate choose to self-delay? Please explain. What topic should the board ask during this candidate's ordination interview? And that was page 19 of the Residency Handbook of 2023. My purpose in reading this is hopefully, if anyone is familiar with the United Methodist denomination and how the administrations work, that they will keep that in mind as I am sharing my story. Because the one question that should be asked is, this handbook is 40 pages long. They are heavily scrutinized. So how is it that a multi-billion-dollar administration misses red flags in employees, clergy who are capable of sexually assaulting minors and clergy who are capable of murder? Okay. I grew up inside the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist denomination. And as a child, I was sexually abused by my father, a man employed within the same religious structure. Instead of being protected, I was silenced. Instead of accountability, there was secrecy. Instead of safety, there was institutional loyalty. And decades later, when I tried to speak up, the same patterns repeated. The leaked letter and retaliation. When I finally came forward as an adult, I trusted the system. I trusted due process, which doesn't exist. I trusted leadership, including an attorney whose name is Harrison Fisher. But that trust was misplaced. Harrison Fisher leaked a confidential letter containing deeply private information, including details about another victim in my paperwork. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a breach of duty, of professionalism, and of basic human decency. And instead of taking responsibility, he retaliated against me for his own error. He weaponized my childhood trauma. Harrison Fisher weaponized my childhood trauma. Harrison Fisher reminded me that the Texas Annual Conference could paint me as mentally ill, that they could tell the media and the public that I was unfit to care for my sons. And he said it as a warning, but it was so much more than a warning. It was meant to be carried out. Not for my safety, but for their protection. To protect the reputation of a multi-billion-dollar administration called the Texas Annual Conference within the United Methodist denomination located in Houston, Texas. For the church's image, for their hierarchy, for their policies, they refused to enforce. This is what systemic failure within the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist denomination looks like. Supervised visitation and false accusations in the family court system of Harris County in Texas. Harrison Fisher's retaliation and the retaliation from the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist denomination in Houston, Texas, didn't end with intimidation. After coming forward, I was slapped with false accusations in my family custody case. My family law attorney was also associated with the Texas Annual Conference administration. I had two attorneys at one time representing me who were heavily associated with the Texas Annual Conference administration. After coming forward, I was slapped with false accusations severe enough to force me into supervised visitation with my sons. Not because I was dangerous, not because I was unfit. I was actually living in a 2-bedroom apartment at the time in Houston, and I had a job. I was working hard to get back on my feet after experiencing retaliation and my car being withheld from me. From Harrison Fisher, who was also associated with the Texas Annual Conference administration. Not because I was dangerous, but because discrediting survivors is easier than confronting decades deep failure to enforce policy. Imagine this: a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, forced to see her own children inside a church within the same conference that once employed her abuser, and that was my father, John Chester Dowden. That church was St. Stephen's United Methodist Church on West 43rd Street in Houston, Texas, part of the Texas Annual Conference administration within the United Methodist denomination. The same institution tied to the man who harmed me. The same institution tied to the man and woman who drugged me with codeine, a narcotic, when I was a little girl, with the intent to physically harm me and to sedate me while they did whatever they wanted. Instead of safety, I was put back into an environment drenched in trauma, as if my history meant nothing. But it gets worse. Humiliation inside of the church. During visitation, parents like me were treated like suspects. There are a lot of parents within the supervised visitation with the Domestic Relations Office of Harris County who do not have a criminal record, do not have a prior psychiatric diagnosis or hospitalization. At the time, I did not have a prior hospitalization or psychiatric diagnosis. It was after I visited my kids at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church that I did admit myself into a psychiatric hospital and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder because I wanted to give up on life. Because I felt that I deserved everything that happened to me. And the reason why everything happened to me was because God hated me. Followed to the restroom by Harris County Domestic Relations Office employees at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church in Houston, Texas. Watched, monitored, treated with suspicion instead of dignity. We were exploited, our vulnerability on display for the staff, for volunteers, for anyone watching. And in the middle of all of this, I was sexually harassed in front of my sons. Apparently, Shane, one of the visiting parents, I guess he thought that it was a speed dating site. He wasn't just there to visit his son. He was there to find someone he could have sex with, but it wasn't going to be me. I was there to visit my sons. But I'm sure St. Stephen's United Methodist Church didn't care because clearly I was considered the appointed whore of the Texas Annual Conference. In front of the staff of St. Stephen's United Methodist Church, I was sexually harassed in front of employees of the Domestic Relations Office, in front of other parents. No one intervened. No one protected me. No one stopped it. Retaliation for reporting harassment. And when I reported the sexual harassment, when I did the right thing, when I followed the rules, when I trusted the system once again, something unthinkable happened. I was kicked out of supervised visitation. Not the harasser, me. A survivor, a mother, someone reporting misconduct. Not for something I did, but for having the courage to speak up. This is how systems maintain power, by punishing those who expose the truth. The cost of systemic failure. Before this documentary ends, I want to say this clearly. None of this was caused by one person. Not one pastor, not one attorney, not one bishop of the Texas Annual Conference, not one court employee. It was caused by a system that failed at every level. A system that failed me as a child when it protected my abuser. A system that failed me as an adult when it retaliated for reporting misconduct. I also have a recording of my child describing his father putting his hands around his neck in 2016, making him think he was going to seriously harm him. Carl E. Anthony is above the law. He's allowed to physically abuse our sons. Carl E. Anthony also knew that the Texas Annual Conference employed my father, who sexually abused me. He knew he was taking our sons to a United Methodist Church that was under an administration that had a history of employing sexual predators. But he was okay with it. Carl E. Anthony was okay with retraumatizing the mother of his children. He's willing to sacrifice the safety and well-being of our sons in an effort to re-traumatize their mother, which is me. A system that failed me as an adult when it retaliated for reporting misconduct. A system that ignored policies, hid behind procedure, and placed institutional image above human safety. A system that leaked confidential information, used my trauma against me, and threatened to smear my name. A system that forced me into supervised visitation because I dared to speak the truth. A system that placed me inside a church tied to my abuser. A system that looked away when harassment happened in plain sight. A system that punished me for reporting it. These are not isolated events. They are connected. They are generational. They are systemic. And they cost me my relationship with my sons, time I will never get back. But here is what the system couldn't take from me. My voice, my truth, my resilience, my determination to expose harm, they tried to hide. This documentary is not just my story, it is a record, a living record of institutional betrayal and systemic abuse across decades. And now it is public. Now it is documented. Now the truth is on record. This is not the end of my story. This is the beginning of accountability.